Hey guys, I wanted to come on here and kind of do like my analysis and breakdown of this interview. Um, it's one thing to be in the interview, but to kind of watch it and do the playback and go over things and see what you wish you would have said differently, or some of their tactics is a completely different thing. So I wanted to come on here and kind of do this analysis and just give you guys my take on it. And I know you guys have made a number of different comments, some of them from people saying that they don't even know why I wasted my time doing the debate, or why I talked to him. Now, let me say this, because a lot of Black people are under the misconception that a debate is so that you can change somebody's mind. And that may be partially true, as with a debate, you're looking to change somebody's mind, but more so, I don't even want to say change mind, because it's more so provide a different perspective. And you're usually not really doing that with the person that you're debating with. You're doing that with the audience. Now, Jesse Lee Peterson has an audience of mostly Caucasoids, but he also has an audience of Black people who are coons. Now, most Black people don't do research. Most Black people go with rhetoric and stereotypes and faulty data and misinterpreted statistics, as white people do. Because again, white people are just as brainwashed as Black people. Their brainwashing is just the reverse. Their brainwashing is based off of, again, misinterpreted statistics and stereotypes that are in their favor, so that they can believe that they're superior when they're not. So the point of this wasn't to necessarily change Jesse Peterson's viewpoint or to make him believe anything, because you have to understand, Jesse Lee Peterson already knows that what he's spewing is a bunch of bullshit. If he wasn't up there saying what he's saying, he wouldn't have a job, because he doesn't have any other employable skills. The sole purpose of someone like Jesse Lee Peterson is to coon and be the mouthpiece of white supremacy. So we need to understand, as a group, this is the primary point of debating him. My goal was to simply go on here and provide statistical data, let his viewership, who are predominantly white, understand that, number one, they're not human. Number two, they don't have a country, they have a cave. And that, number three, they commit most of the crimes contrary to popular belief. And I also wanted to illustrate, because I know how Jesse Lee Peterson is. I've watched a ton of his interviews, so I know how he is. But I wanted to show how he's not spewing anything but rhetoric. So that was the point of this debate. It wasn't really about whether or not I wanted to change his opinion. He isn't going to change his opinion, and if he did, he would be unemployed. Okay? I did this so that I can get talking points out. I'm usually watching debates on CNN and Fox News, and I'm often irritated because they're not saying what they need to say, or they're not saying what I think that they need to say. So that's what this was about. This was just about me trying to get certain talking points out, sticking to the issue of white supremacy and white criminality in a way that I haven't seen anybody else get into. But let's play some of this, and then throughout it, I'll give some commentary, because I want to point out specific things. But understand, this is not an intelligent person. His speech is slurred. You can tell throughout it. I could tell throughout it someone was feeding him data and telling him what to say. So at the end of the day, again, he's just a talking head for white supremacy. That's nothing more, nothing less. And Black people need to understand how to deal with people like this, because you would deal with him in the same way that you would deal with a white supremacist troll, which I wouldn't necessarily go back and forth with just any old ordinary white supremacist troll, and you shouldn't either. But if you do, this is the way that I think you should handle it. This is the way that I would handle it, because anyway, let's just get into it.
Thursday, since we're doing the best stuff tomorrow and Monday. Monday's Memorial Day. So happy Memorial Day in advance. I am Skyping with Cynthia G. She's a popular YouTube personality from Seattle, Washington. She talks about white supremacy and the psychology of Black oppression. Cynthia was referred to us by Phil Scott of the Advice Show, and we had Phil on last week. I want to talk to Cynthia about racism, men, marriage, mother, the whole deal. Welcome to the show, Cynthia. Cynthia, thanks for coming on.
No problem, and thank you, Jesse, for having me here.
Sorry about the mix up there, whatever going on with the Skyping, but we have it now and we can get rolling. I want to know, define white supremacy for me.
Well, white supremacy by definition is a mentality. Anyone who believes by speech, action, and thought that white people are supreme and should therefore be placed in a dominant position to non-whites and should be subjugating them. So that's white supremacy. And I do believe that anyone can be a white supremacist, by the way. I don't believe that only white people are white supremacists because it is a mentality.
And how do you know when someone believes that white people are supreme?
Now, this is his first time wasting tactic, because when I say it means that anybody who believes by speech, action, or thought process, your next question shouldn't come into play. But this is his time wasting tactic, because if he's wasting time having you repeat yourself, you're not getting to all of your talking points. So the bottom line is, obviously, an example in a way you can find out if somebody is a white supremacist by listening to their speech or watching their behaviors. So this isn't him being smart. He's wasting time. Because their speech and behavior will reflect that belief, that thought process.
Give me an example of their speech that indicates that they're white, that they believe whites are supreme.
I can give you some examples of some white supremacists. How about Richard Spencer? Well, see, right here, what I wish I would have done when he said some examples of speech that would say that they are supreme, I wish I would have mentioned, the alt-right and saying that, white people can't build a civilization with other people's babies. I wish I would have just given some examples like that, or quoted some things that Richard Spencer said, or, Steve King saying before black people outnumber white people, they'll be fighting amongst each other, regurgitating white supremacist talking points, saying black on black crime, I wish I would have gave some of those examples, but otherwise, giving him some examples of people who run around with white supremacist rhetoric, it should be enough for him, but you're talking about somebody that's extremely slow. But right here, what I would change about this is that I would have gotten some specific quotes. And of course, you can't run around memorizing everything that everyone says, and people usually don't come out blatantly. It's more covert. So you would have to read between the lines, unless that person is just outright bold, outlandishly racist, which usually people aren't. But I could have just said, the amount of white people running around calling black people niggers that we saw. But let's continue. Sir Donald Trump. What I believe is most white Americans are white supremacists, and there are some non-white Americans who are also white supremacists. For example, them having the belief system in justifying and defending the disenfranchisement of black people. Actually, Jesse, I would say that you're a white supremacist based on your rhetoric.
So why call it white supremacy? Why don't you just call it supremacy?
Look, this is extremely remedial, okay? This is why I'm telling you guys, this is not an intellectual person, and most white supremacists are not intellectual. Because if I'm saying that it's in favor of white people, why would you ask me, why shouldn't it just be called supremacy? Dumb. Because it's in favor of white people specifically. So that's why it's white supremacy.
Oh, I see. Give me an example of Donald Trump being a white supremacist.
All of his rhetoric from his entire campaign.
Like what, for example?
Now, see, with someone like him, what I wish I would have did is kind of reversed my presentation. Whereas at the end part of it, when I said, or the middle part of it, when I said, he's aligning himself with David Duke, and he's refused to denounce the KKK, talking about build a wall. I wish I would have put that first, but only because of the level of remedialness that Jesse is displaying. For everyone else, the example was exemplary. It was good enough. But for him, since he's remedial, then that means I wish I would have, kind of reversed it. But let's continue.
You saw his campaign, he ran it completely on white supremacy. So if you look at even Donald Trump's actions right now by aligning himself with the alt-right and white supremacists such as Jeff Sessions, who have a record of disenfranchising Black people, that he's a white supremacist. Making the statement that Black people are lazy and good for nothing but stealing, that would be a white supremacist statement. Making the false statement that Mexicans are over in America raping when white males have the highest rate of rape, that's white supremacy, because it's ignoring the fact it's ignoring facts and basing your mentality and your whole speech off of rhetoric that is completely false, but it's in favor of white people.
You're not really saying anything. Give me an example.
Now, this is a remedial person, and what he's actually doing by throwing out these insults and saying, oh, you're not really saying anything, what he's trying to get you to do is over-explain yourself so that you're not moving on to the rest of it. He wants to try to get you to over-explain yourself, and then he wants to try to bait you into getting emotional so that you'll just resort to name-calling, which is what he did. So this is simply a tactic of him, again, to deflect and reduce himself to a troll.
Well, it's not that I'm not saying it, Jesse. You're just not comprehending it, and I can't think for you or comprehend for you. I just gave you plenty of examples.
Give me an example of something that President Trump said or did that indicates that he is a white supremacist.
For example, the public housing lawsuits that he was sued for and settled twice for discrimination against Black people. That would be an example of immediate and direct white supremacy. Beyond that, if you still don't understand it, Jesse, me further explaining it to you wouldn't be a benefit. And then I would have to ask you to move to the next question.
You really are not saying anything. You accuse President Trump of being a white supremacist. And yet,
I just gave you an example of his white supremacist behaviors.
You said during the campaign and other times that he displayed it, but yet when I asked you to give me an example, you run to something else that has nothing to do with
I gave you two examples. His whole campaign, Make America Great Again, Build the Wall, the increases in hate speech, the alt-right and white supremacist groups, the KKK attaching themselves to Donald Trump, they're not doing that for a reason. They're not doing that because Donald Trump is promoting togetherness and unity. He's promoting racial division. That's what he's doing. So again, beyond those two obvious examples, Jesse, I can't do anything for you if you don't understand how he's a white supremacist based on the examples that I gave.
And so wanting to put a big beautiful wall around the border is white supremacist. Let me ask, do you want...
Based on his reasonings for wanting to do it is white supremacy, because he's suggesting that these immigrants, which, by the way, white people are immigrants. So you can't be in a country that is not yours and then call other people immigrants. This country doesn't belong to white people. So the mentality of thinking that this is a white country is white supremacy in and of itself, specifically based on the way that it was obtained. Now, you can go further and say the fact that he, after understanding the acquisition of this country, trying to lock out immigrants under the premise that they're somehow in this country raping and committing a large amount of crimes when that's not true.
It is true.
Right?
Now, listen, this is my thing. What I wish is that every Black person would point that out. That's why I specifically said this isn't white people's country, because you have them running around saying, make America great again, telling people to go back to where they came from, talking about illegal immigrants and all of this nonsense when they're the illegal immigrants. So thinking that this is a white country is white supremacy, because it's not. They do not have a country. They have a cave. And that's the thing that kind of irritates me, because Black people should not be allowing these Caucasoid devils to run around thinking that they have a country when they don't. You don't have a country. That's the first thing we should be reminding them. This isn't your country. So you don't get to just sit here and say what should be going on in this country. If we do hypothetically say that it might be their country and they're in control of it, we need to emphasize the fact that this is a country that they stole in a very savage manner. Okay, so that's what Black people, because I get a lot of trolls on Twitter where they're like, "Oh, you're in a white country. If you don't like it, why don't you go back to Africa?" All you guys need to do is remind them, you don't have a country, you have a cave. Let's continue.
It is true. Let me ask.
It actually isn't true.
No, it is true. Let me ask. Do you want
the FBI crime data says differently. It says white people are committing the most crimes. I don't know where you're getting your information from.
Wrong.
Well,
But let me ask you a question. Hold on.
But Jesse, I'm looking
Hold
at
on.
the FBI crime. Would you like for me to share my screen and show you the FBI crime data that says white people commit the most crimes?
Hey.
Now, this is why he's like a white supremacist, because notice that you can give them all of the data. You can give them every single bit of the data. Notice how he's saying, oh, that's not true. He's not providing any facts. I'm telling him, according to the FBI data, it is true. And he's saying, no, it's not true. This is what white supremacists do. Which, again, he's just a white supremacist in blackface at the end of the day. That's all that he is. But he's been trained and hypnotized and versed on white supremacist tactics. So that's why he's just saying, oh, that's just not true. And he's not saying, well, according to this source, that is true. That's the difference between a troll, because he really only has about 5 talking points. He really does. He only has about 5 talking points, all of which I debunked right in this one video. But let's continue.
I'm down the whole line Thursday/Friday because tomorrow.
Now, I do want to say this one thing. Notice how he's saying, calm down, calm down. That's a typical white supremacist tactic too, because since he can't bait me into an obvious emotional reaction, he wants to try to make it appear that I'm somehow not calm. And then I had to edit this video because throughout this, whenever he takes a break, he's actually playing music. And so because of copyright, you have to edit it out. But during that time, he will mute my screen, mute my microphone, and then say, oh, be quiet. So this is a dirty tactic of them. And this is why you just have to play past it. And you're going to see me in here playing past a lot of his petty attempts.
We're going to be playing the best of the Jesse Lee Peterson radio show. And again, on Monday. Monday's a holiday, Memorial Day weekend. So happy Memorial Day. And I have to fly up to Las Vegas tomorrow for a debate tomorrow night. So we can join it all today. We are having church on Sunday. You're all invited, everybody and their mama. Go to rebuildingtheman.com. To rebuildingtheman.com /church. And for information on the debate tomorrow night in Vegas, I think you're going to be able to watch it on YouTube as well. They're charging for it, but I think you can watch it. For more information about that, I'm going to be debating a black preacher on faith, Jesus, and race. Go to jesseleepeterson.com /speaking. And we're taking your phone calls right now at 888-77-53773. 888-77 Jesse. I'm Skyping with Cynthia G, a popular YouTube personality from Seattle, Washington. She talks about about white supremacy and the psychology of black oppression. Cynthia, are you in support of putting a big, beautiful wall around the borders?
I'm not in support of putting a big wall around the borders because I don't think that that's as much of a problem. I think the problem is the domestic terrorism of white supremacist radicals. I think that's a bigger issue. And if Donald Trump said he was going to put a wall around the borders and then kick out all of the racial extremist white supremacists so that they couldn't come back into the country, then I would support that. But then he would have to kick himself out. This
is a key point right here, you guys, because listen, One of the ways that they divide and conquer Black people from other races of people is by lying, saying that there's an issue that other races of people are perpetuating that's affecting you as a Black person. And the reason why they do that, because then it stops minorities from banding together, because again, they're not the majority. They're really not the majority. Understand that a lot of Hispanics are actually white. Okay, a lot of Hispanics are white, but they're really not the majority. If all minorities were to get together, they're not going to be the majority, and they wouldn't stand a chance. So what they do is they give Black people, once again, faulty data, saying that there's this illegal immigrant problem and they're taking all of your jobs and they're running around with all this gang activity, and that's just not true. All of the data says that if Black people aren't getting jobs, it doesn't have anything to do with illegal immigration. It has everything to do with white people taking numerous methods, including screening resumes so that they can look for names that might sound Black and then not hiring them. Or when they do hire them, referring and falling back on that at-will employment law that says that you can fire them for any reason and then firing them. So the lack of jobs and school funding and all these things has nothing to do with illegal immigration. The reason why they keep promoting that is because they want you to think that somehow there's all these illegal immigrants in this country and they're just running amok and disenfranchising Black people, and that's not the case. If the illegal immigrants are in the country, and if it is a problem, which it isn't, then that isn't a problem that's paramount to white supremacy, because that would just be a symptom. That's why my goal is to sit here and tell him that's not a big issue. So again, this whole debate to me was about debunking his rhetoric and his faulty data, because he's on his computer. So he could say, according to this study, according to this data, according to that data, it is true. Notice how he's only saying, oh, it's not true. But he's on a computer, so he could research it and tell you where he's getting that from, but he's choosing not to.
Amazing. That's it. A lot of these illegal aliens.
Also, I meant to say this. Also, whenever you're doing a debate, it's important to call white supremacist terrorists, and you need to call them domestic terrorists, okay? Because that is what they are. They don't get look, they can't criminalize you and call you criminals, thugs, and all this other stuff, and then not get terms on their own too. So that's why I stick to white supremacist extremists, white supremacist domestic terrorists, because the data actually says that people in America are more at risk of being attacked by a white supremacist, conservative, domestic terrorist than any terrorist organization on the face of the earth. Mainstream media just isn't going to call them terrorists. So I'm going to call them terrorists, and that's what you guys need to call them, because the face of terrorism isn't going to be a brown face whenever you're interviewing me. The face of terrorism is going to be a white face, because the data backs that up.
Ending up in the inner cities around the country, especially
the white
places.
ones are the Black ones.
Hold on. Especially in California and New York and things.
Now, the reason why I said the white ones are the Black ones, because they want you to believe that most of the illegal immigrants and the immigrants in this country are non-white, but they're not. The biggest immigrants are actually white immigrants. They just manipulate and show you media where they tell you, oh, there's all of these illegal immigrants. No, because they'll have Russian immigrants over here, and they're giving them more resources than citizens in this country. That's why I said, oh, the Black ones are the white ones, because you need people to understand that illegal immigrants aren't just Black or Mexican, which there really isn't any DNA that codes for Mexican. That's why I say either Black or non-Black, because what a lot of people don't understand is there really are only a few genetic racial categories, okay? Because if you do a DNA test if on a Mexican, it's not going to say Mexican. Take George Lopez, for example. George Lopez is a Mexican. He took a DNA report. None of his DNA says Mexican. It says he has African DNA. It says he has European DNA, and he has a number of different DNA. There isn't a DNA classification for Colombian. There isn't or Colombian. There isn't a DNA classification for Mexican. There isn't one for mestizo. So none of those are actually racial classification. Those are different ways of saying this is a multiracial person. So that's why I say, are they black or are they white? Because anybody with dark skin is of African descent. Anyone that doesn't have dark skin is European, has a high content of European. There's only 3 to 4 main racial classifications. I believe it's actually 3: black, white, and Asian. Those are the only 3 racial groups. Everyone else is just a mixture of those. Puerto Rican isn't a race. Dominican isn't a race. It's saying that you're basically Puerto Rican, you're a black person from a Spanish-speaking island, okay? Before there was any Puerto Rican classifications, there was a bunch of Africans in Puerto Rico. Before there was any Dominican race, which is not a race, it's a culture, there were Africans in the Dominican Republic, okay? In the Dominican Republic. So people need to understand there's only a handful of races. That's why I said the black ones are the white ones.
Like that. And as a result of ending up in these inner cities, you have the gangs that are coming in who are supported by the drug lords. So violence has been breaking out all over between blacks and Hispanics. In the public school system, the illegal...
by the way, none of what he's saying is true. Like, not one thing that what he's saying is true. That really isn't happening.
Aliens are taking over and have taken over. Blacks are upset about that. Many blacks are being forced to leave their own neighborhoods because of the lack of jobs, education, healthcare. Does it bother you at all?
Look, even if illegal immigrants were the issue, they don't have the power to lock black people out of schools, jobs, healthcare, and neighborhoods. They do not have the power to do that. So everything that he's saying is a complete lie.
Blacks are being affected first and foremost by illegal aliens.
Did you just hear what he said? He said blacks are being affected first and foremost by illegal immigrants. Now, we all know that that's not true, and we know he didn't find any data to suggest that. So like a typical white supremacist, he's sitting there just saying stuff just to be saying it. Because black people are not first and foremost disenfranchised by illegal immigrants.
I don't believe, Jesse, that black people are being affected in any substantial detrimental way by the presence of illegal immigrants. But I do believe that they are being affected by white supremacy primarily. Because what you just mentioned, the schools, the job, inner cities, all of those are symptoms of a much bigger problem called white supremacy. And to focus on anything other than the issue of white supremacy is really counterproductive. What you're saying to me is the equivalent of if I had the flu, and I'm trying to treat my nausea rather than getting rid of the flu so that all the symptoms will go away. Even if illegal immigrants are here and they're committing crimes, they're being allowed to be here. So that wouldn't be anything except more of a reflection on white supremacy.
Always bring it back to the point, okay? Always circle it back to the point, because immigrants are being allowed here. And I don't believe that immigrants are over here and attacking this American border. Nobody's going to convince me that America has a very wealthy economy and they have the strongest military forces, but yet they aren't able to control their borders. Really? They're not able to control their borders. Who's giving these illegal immigrants social securities and cards and IDs? Because a lot of them have social security cards and IDs. They really do. Who's giving them those? Who's making them capable of working? Even if they are stealing the jobs, somebody is employing them. They're not doing that on their own. So at the end of the day, it just goes back to white supremacy. That's why you always have to put the onus where it's at. Even if I acknowledge anything that he's saying, I'm going to tell him that's simply just a symptom of white supremacy. Even everything that black people deal with, black on black crime, colorism, even the plantation bug, single mothers, out of wedlock babies. All of that is a symptom of white supremacy. And the only effective way of dealing with the issue is keeping the primary issue at the forefront of every topic.
To be honest. But to answer your question, I don't believe that Black people are being affected by immigration to the extent that you're suggesting.
And so is that a no? You're not bothered by that?
I don't believe that that's occurring.
So is that a no?
I'm bothered by white supremacy and its impact on Black people.
And so because you don't believe that this is happening to Black Americans.
This is a deflective tactic. All he's doing is deflecting, because the bottom line is you don't have to answer a question yes or no. It's like I already told you. Obviously, if I don't believe that that's an issue, how does that not answer the question? He's deflecting.
In the inner city, is that a no? You're not bothered by it?
I'm bothered by white supremacy and its impact on Black people. In terms of prioritizing, even if I saw immigration as a big issue, I would prioritize. And since white supremacy is a bigger issue, I would address that issue, because I feel like even if Black people are to a detriment, which they may be to a detriment of illegal immigrants, I believe that that is a symptom of white supremacy. So I would address white supremacy, and then if still need be, I would deal with that situation of immigration. But I don't believe that that's affecting Black people to the degree that you're suggesting. I think white supremacy is paramount to that. Do
you realize you're not answering the question?
I just answered it twice for you, Jesse. You just don't like my answer, and that's okay.
Why don't people answer my question? What's wrong with this lady? You do know you're not saying no or yes to the question, right?
It's not a yes or no question. You do realize that a question can be answered in many different ways. It doesn't have to be yes or no.
I ask you where you've been. You tell me where you're going.
Jesse, I answered your question. That is my answer.
So I'll take it as...
We can go around in circles on that answer, or we can move to the next question.
I'll take it as no, you don't care. Let me ask. You call me white supremacist.
Yes.
And why?
Because your whole rhetoric is focused on blaming the symptom, which is Black people's behavior and however you perceive it, rather than focusing on the issue of white supremacy. You've also numerous times pathologized Black people in the Black community, but you've somehow ignored the cause of that pathology, which is white supremacy. So anyone that chooses to ignore the issue of white supremacy, to me, then you enjoy white supremacy, you want to maintain it. So you have to maintain white supremacy. You have the same mindset and belief system that white supremacists have. So that's why I believe that you're a white supremacist in blackface.
I talk about the cause of Black Americans. Not all, but most. I talk about why they're so angry, brainwashed, and dumbed down.
Well, Jesse, why do you think they're angry? They're angry about what?
Well, they're angry because they have been raised by angry Black mothers and grandmothers.
There's no possible way for him to ascertain that. So again, this is just another person just saying stuff just to be saying it. And you're going to start seeing how many times he mutes my microphones when I'm actually going in, because he already knows he has no control over, he doesn't have any control over which way the conversation goes. Whenever he just keeps repeatedly asking the same question over and over, it's because he doesn't have anything to contribute to it. The only time he has stuff to say is when his producer, who's there with him, is feeding him the garbage to say.
Who hate their mothers, who hate their mothers, who hate their mothers. And then they're yearning for their fathers. The boys and girls are yearning for their fathers, and they hate the mothers. And as you know, you become like whomever you hate. And so a lot of these Black men and women are growing up with the personality of their mothers and not their own. And so what I tell them to do is that they need to forgive their mothers so that they can overcome her and become who they are, instead of living the life of someone else and passing it down to their children. And until that happens, until Black Americans.
Look, Jesse Lee Peterson can barely understand simple concepts. So there's no possible way he's even remotely qualified to make that assessment that he made, okay? Because he's not really doing a psychological analysis on the Black community. So he's regurgitating some talking points that white people told him to say. None of what he said has any merit at all.
Return to their fathers by overcoming their mothers. They're going to always be blaming and begging and whipping and whining and having people like you out there to brainwash them in their fallen state of anger.
White people have their families around, and they're still mass shooters and pedophiles and rapists and serial killers.
Let me take a break.
So why?
Back in a moment. Black power. Black power. I'm Skyping with Cynthia G. Cynthia,
Yes.
I get the impression that you are an angry, nasty woman.
Look, this is a tactic of white supremacy. They want to try to dismiss what you're saying out of anger, okay? And since everybody can clearly see that I'm not angry at all, I'm very calm and composed, he's going to, since he can't really, there's no evidence of him, he's just going to assign it. He's just going to say, oh, you're just an angry woman. So that's why I played past him. And that's what you should always do. Whenever one of these white supremacists try to bait you with an insult, don't take the bait, just play past it. Now, I couldn't care less about anything that Jesse Lee Peterson says. I already know he tries to take personal attacks on people. I've watched a number of his different interviews, and he did it to one Black lady, and she actually hung up on him. She got very emotional. So because of that, he felt like, okay, well, I would just bait people. I'm just going to play past it.
Why am I getting that?
You get a lot of false impressions, but I would like to take a minute to respond to what you said before we went to break.
Hold on.
You said that Black anger is why.
Now look, see, this is what he wants to do. I already played past him trying to bait me into an emotional response. Then I went back and said, okay, well, you can have false impressions. That's fine. You think whatever you want to. Let's get back to the statement that you made about fatherless homes. Then he mutes it, which at this point in time, I didn't know that the microphone was muted. So that's why I'm still making the statements, because I could hear him talking. I'm trying to get my point across, because a lot of white supremacists will deflect, which is what he's doing. He's trying to deflect and say something that he already said. So he muted my microphone. And the reason you see me still talking is because I didn't even know I was muted.
Cynthia, she's an angry, nasty woman. And it's these type of Black women who are raising Black boys and girls that are becoming just like them, and they blame this on white people. And until we can change that situation, things are not going to get better. And all angry people feel like victims, and they blame someone else for that. And if we don't deal, Cynthia, with what's happening in the homes with these mothers destroying the souls of their children, and then the race hustlers using them for their own personal gain, how would Black people ever get better?
Well, first, I would like for you to ask, why are white people committing so many crimes? And they have two-parent homes, they have wealth, they have opportunities, job opportunities, they have economics. They still commit the most crimes. So this is why I don't buy into your fatherless home narrative, because you have a community of white people who have fathers in their homes, and they're still being domestic terrorists, they're still being racial terrorists, they're still committing the most rape and violent crimes. So I would like to know, why are they doing that when they have fathers in the home?
Now, the reason he's going to say is that a joke is because he's stuck. Now, at this point, he's stuck because, listen, in order to validate what he's saying, okay, because he's saying that there's these fatherless homes, it's what's causing Black people to commit all these crimes. So when you compare that to the white community who have fathers in their home, you should see that community being void of crime, because he's essentially saying if you have Black fathers in the home to raise their children, then that's going to substantially reduce that propensity for crime. So when we look at the white community and we compare it, because they statistically have a higher rate of fathers being in the home, we should therefore see a decline in criminality. But the reality is we don't. We see white people having their families in the home, and we also see them leading the nation in crimes by numbers and percentage. So the way that he's saying, reason why he's saying this is a joke is because him and his producer is stuck. That's why you always give him something that's going to back him into a corner, because right now his back is up against a wall. He can't bring anything intellectually. He can't answer the question, and that's why he's not going to.
Sound like a joke. Are you playing a trick on me right now? Are you being real?
I'm giving you facts, Jesse, and you don't have to like them, but they're still facts.
Why did Bill from the advice show refer you to? Did he think that you were going to make sense of something?
Again, he's not answering the question, though. So this is someone that just previously said 3 times, oh, you're not answering the question. You didn't answer the question. But notice how now he's so backed into a wall. He has absolutely nothing to say, that he's actually trying to deflect and say, oh, why did Phil bring you here? I don't know why Phil even brought you here. That doesn't have anything to do with what I just asked you, though. It's like you didn't answer the question of why white people have so much crime in their community and they have a very high rate of father participation. Why are they committing many crimes? He's not going to ever answer this question because he can't. And if you ask any white supremacist this question, you're going to shut their whole argument down about these fatherless homes because he cannot answer it. He can't answer it. And none of them will be able to answer it.
What was the reason?
You would have to ask Phil about his decisions and referrals, Jesse. But I do notice that you are deflecting, which is interesting. I would have expected the trolling to come from your callers, not from you, because when you resort to petty name calling and making statements that bear no importance on the topic, that just means you're trolling.
So when you call me white,
I'm starting to believe, Jesse, that you're the one who has nothing to say because you've reduced yourself to a troll.
Again, call them out on trolling and deflecting. Nothing that he is saying has anything to do with these absentee fathers in the home. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Why are you talking about stuff that does not matter? And so when you guys see them deflecting and running around the question, because he's trying to deflect, he's trying to run away from this question that I keep saying, answer this question, Jesse. White people got fathers in the home. They commit a lot of crimes, Jesse. Why are they committing them? He can't answer them. So bottom line is he can't answer that question. He know I just hit a point that he cannot argue that point. That's why he's not doing it. And notice how he did not say that's not true, because he already knows they do. They shouldn't have any crime. He's backed into a wall. He's deflecting.
Call me white supremacy. Was that petty name calling?
No, it wasn't. It was giving you an analysis on your rhetoric, my analysis on your rhetoric.
Amazing.
And it's in alignment with white supremacy. But you still haven't answered my question that I would like for you to question, because we're talking about the impact of fathers being out of the home. And we know that white people have the community with the highest rate of fathers in the home. So why are they committing so many crimes, and why do they have a drug epidemic right now that can't even be stopped at this point? Why are they the biggest mass shooters? Why are they the biggest pedophiles?
Hold on, I got it.
Look, now he has to go back to a commercial, because look, I answered his little deflective question. Then I went back and said, okay, but that's not even what we're talking about. We're talking about fatherless homes. So right now I'm trying to root him in what he said. And that's what you have to do. That's what Tariq is talking about when he says, make them accountable for what they say. Make them explain to you what they are saying. So that's why I keep bringing it back to them. Why are white people committing all these crimes? They have their fathers in the home. You just said black people don't have fathers in the home, so they're running out committing all this black crime and crime against everything. Why are white people doing what they're doing? They have fathers in the home. Make them be accountable for what they say. Don't let them get you off topic. bring it back to whatever he just left off, because you guys know we've been going back and forth on this fatherless thing for a while, because he said that a little while ago. He said that at least 5 minutes ago. He mentioned this fatherless home, and he's been running away from it ever since. And I keep bringing it back saying, dude, you just said that why are the white people committing? So I'm destroying his points, and I'm trying to make him explain it. He can't explain it. So right now he's trying to divert from that because he's not looking credible, because he said something that he can't back up. So that's why you need to make them explain it, because you need to explain this. You're saying stuff you can't even back it up. Period.
I haven't come there.
I'm just looking to get my question.
In any culture, you're going to have good and evil, because the battle is a spiritual battle. It's a warfare between good and evil. So in all cultures, you're going to find that. But
I wish I would have asked him, if you believe it's a warfare between good and evil, why are you aligning yourself with evil? But which I do agree with him that it is a warfare between good and evil. White people are the evil, black people are the good. He's a part of the evil because he's a coon, and coons are always going to be part of the evil. But I wish I would have said that. But then with the amount of muting that he was doing, I just felt like, get these talking points out, stick to what white people are doing.
Because
that's almost exclusive. Some of these things are almost exclusive
Cynthia,
to the
hold
white
on.
community.
That's not true.
I
Hold
agree
on.
that there's good and bad in everything.
That's
but
not true.
What I'm talking about isn't really prevalent in other cultures.
You're going to find good and evil in all cultures, but in the black community, it's out of control because you have 73%. You have 73% of black children born out of wedlock.
And look, he's sticking to this out of wedlock, but I just asked him, why are white people committing these crimes? They're born in wedlock. Okay, white people are born in wedlock. Which, by the way, I really wish I would have said, Jesse, there's a whole show called Teen Mom, full of white kids full of white girls having children by multiple different dudes. They're not married, they're teenagers. I wish I would have remembered that, but let's continue.
And there's no sense of trying to correct that, so you see it more in the black community. When I call you a nasty woman, was that assessment with anger? Was that assessment?
No, it was
an
assessment
tactic
to make me to get into an emotional state so you can try to prove
too late for that.
That's what that was.
Let me go to some calls real fast. We run out of time here. We're going to have you back because of the problem we had with the Skype. Let me go to Tony out of Chelsea, Michigan. Tony, good morning, sir. You're on with Cynthia G.
Hey, how are you doing, Jeff?
All is well. Thanks for calling.
Like a few callers ago, when you had the last person on, and a few callers ago, and the young man said, well, somebody's eyes are going to be opened up. Somebody's eyes are going to be opened up from listening to her right here. The funniest part about her was when you put her on hold, how she was still going on. I mean, it was almost comical.
Listen, why is it always a black man cooning? Because you're a black man, you're calling up to co-sign with negativity about you as a black man. So that's really interesting. The mindset of a coon is very, very interesting. But notice that he doesn't have a particular question. He has a statement. But like I said, I didn't know that I was muted. So of course, anybody who doesn't know they're muted is going to continue talking.
And they won't understand when you talk about white supremacy. I'm from the area of Detroit. Detroit's been run by black people totally for over 40 years. And look where it's at. Just take one quick look. Buffalo, look at Cincinnati. These are politicians, black politicians that are running these cities, and they run them into the ground. And I'm not saying anything. You don't have to, it has nothing to do with black or white, whatever.
He's an idiot. He just said white supremacy. What I wish I would have remembered at this point, for anybody that's been watching my video, I lived in Detroit, okay? I lived in Detroit. The last time I lived in Detroit, like about 2005. During the time that I was in Detroit, they were, let me tell you, it is so economically deprived. It is ridiculous. And I wish I would have remembered that, that for this point. But because he keeps muting me, certain things I have to just get it out. But when I was in Detroit, they were closing a number of different schools. Okay, a number of different schools they were closing in Detroit. Mind you, Detroit have gone downhill since I've been there. So the thing of it is even when I was in Detroit, because there's a number of different factors. Number one, poor eating habits. And a lot of people don't understand how poor eating habits relate to this, but what you put in your body ultimately has a very huge impact on how your body is going to function, even how you think. There wasn't even a grocery store anywhere near where I was at. And I was in Inkster, which if anybody knows what Inkster is in Detroit, it's a very, very bad neighborhood, okay? The dude that I was there dating, he didn't even know what a produce section is, because that's how you don't even see grocery stores. So you don't have grocery stores and vegetables and fruits all over. You don't have access to that. You only have access to fast food, which is poison, liquor stores, and a whole bunch of funeral homes on the corner. So it's very much conducive to exactly what it's producing. But I wish I would have mentioned that, dude, I lived in Detroit. So you're not going to tell me about schools closing in Detroit. I lived there.
But that's what I see, and that's what's showing here.
And Cynthia, how do you respond to that? Whose fault is it that Atlanta, Detroit, Gary, Indiana, Chicago, anywhere that blacks are in control is all hell to pay?
Well, black people aren't controlling any particular state. So that's where we disagree, because black people don't control those. But when you do have areas where there aren't any economic opportunities, where they strip the jobs from them and close down schools, that's going to be a breeding ground for crime. But what we do know is that white people have these opportunities. They have the education, they have the wealth, they have the job opportunities, but they still commit more crime. So why is it that there's so much crime in the white community under white people's control despite their benefits and resources?
You said
Now, let me just say something. This whole country is controlled by white people, okay? Make no mistakes. This whole country is controlled by white people, and yet you have racism, you have a high amount of crime, you have a country that's literally divided, you have white supremacists running amok, you have a bunch of mass shooters, you have a bunch of poverty. They can't even, how are you going to sit here and talk about something that black people are controlling? If white people control the country, black people don't control the state. I don't care how many positions they are in, they don't control it. White people control it. Look at the state of this country under the control of white people, okay? But then you have this dumb coon who's probably there laid up with a white person talking negatively about black people when he's black. Because all he's essentially saying is that as a black man, I'm admitting that black men are ineffective in terms of leadership and running anything. But this coon is so stupid, he doesn't even understand he's talking negatively about himself.
things that are not true. What's wrong with
They're true and according to the FBI data. So are you saying that the FBI data that says that white people commit the most crimes, are you saying that the FBI data is incorrect?
Yeah.
He discredited himself 100% right there. And I think his producer said, dude, you can't say that over the air. Because the minute that he said, yes, the FBI is wrong, you completely lost all credibility. To anybody smart, the minute that he said the FBI crime data is inaccurate, you lost a ton of credibility right there. And that's why he's going to double back. Because his producer was probably like, dude, no. And then notice how he's saying, oh, that's not true, that's not true. But again, he's not giving you any information. And then you got this coon over here talking about, well, I don't see that. So because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening? Really? He's going to say, I don't see that. That doesn't mean it's not happening. I don't see what's going on in Iraq, but I know they have issues over there. I wasn't there when the white supremacist troops were over there, but I know they were over there murdering and steal resources. I don't see the air, but I know if I cease to have oxygen that I'll die. So the bottom line is, just because you don't see it, dum-dum, doesn't mean that it's not occurring. Like, the ignorance of these coons is just astounding to me. But yeah, I want you guys to see how he double backed on that.
Okay, so where are you getting your information from, and how do you validate your information and your talking points? Because mine comes from the FBI data. Yours come from your opinion, and that's the difference between me and you.
Hey, Jesse, have a good day, man.
Thank you. You too, Tony. Thanks for your call. Back in a moment, folks.
He had some pre-planned coon calls. He did. They have some pre-planned troll calls. But I want you guys to notice how, and to take note, whenever a Caucasoid says something, you ask them where they're getting their information from, because he's shouting out, oh, that's not true. The FBI is wrong. That's wrong. Okay, where'd you get your information from? While you're sitting here saying that you're right and the FBI is wrong, where are you? Because you're just one single coon that's not doing any type of research at all. He's talking about an entire federal organization that does research and accumulation from every Justice Department across this country. He's saying that they're wrong and he's right. That's what he's saying. That is a detrimental coon, but it sounds like his producer checked him when they went to break.
Yours come from your opinion, and that's the difference between me and you.
Hey, Jesse, have a good day, man.
Thank you. You too, Tony. Thanks for your call. Back in a moment, folks. There are more white folks in this country, and so you're going to have more white people doing some things.
Look, his producer said, dude, you sound real stupid. So then his producer was like, just go say there's more white people. That doesn't matter because you haven't made a link between population size and propensity for crime. Listen, if anybody who can say, oh, they're just a higher population, they're deflecting. Just because you're a higher population does not mean you have to have a high level of crime. They're basically telling you that because white people are a bigger population, they get a pass for their amount of crime. They should be committing all these crimes. And no, they shouldn't. Because crime isn't based on population size. It's based on circumstances within that population. So white people don't have any of those really negative consequences or situations. So they actually shouldn't have a high rate of crime, given the fact that they have all the benefits that this country could afford to them. No, they actually should not have a high amount of crime. They should actually have the lowest amount of crime.
But for the number of blacks, hold on, Cynthia, hold on. Turn the mic. But for the number.
Now, notice how he again mutes it. He asks a question and then I'm answering it and then he mutes it. Now, when Caucasoids claim to be the paradigms of morality, and when they're sitting here saying that black people are innately violent and black people are savage, they should not have a higher crime rate at all, regardless to population size, than the people that they're saying are more criminal and more violent than them. Again, he hasn't provided any evidence to suggest any link at all between population size and criminality, because there isn't one. There is not one. No group of people who claim to be moral, who claim to be nonviolent, should ever be having the highest rate of crime in the country.
Black folks in this country, disproportionately, they are committing more violent crimes and other issues than ours.
Again, no, they're not, because white people account for 60% of the violent crimes in the country. And I wish I would have told him that. But again, he's on a mutant spree. So that's what it is.
So we need to deal with that. I'm talking to Cynthia. I'm going to have her back because we were supposed to have her at the top of the hour, but there were problems with the Skype thing. So we're going to have her.
And see, they keep muting because I'm telling them the crime data. So that's how they deal with these. Clearly, they know they have no leg to stand on. They have absolutely no leg to stand on. So at this point, they're like, well, whatever. We can't really refute what she's saying. We can't argue against it. So we'll just mute.
Dirty woman. So let's go to realist out of Lakeland, Florida. Realist, you're always Cynthia. Go ahead.
Yeah, just for time, I'm gonna sum it up like this. It's called demagoguery, and for the low informational voters who are ignorant of stats and that kind of stuff, if they don't know and they listen to these people that quote unquote supposed to be so intelligent, using intelligent words, it's got to be the most comical thing, and my heart goes out to the people who's actually listening to this garbage. It's almost comical.
Another black male coon. Okay, now the minute that black men come to the realization and admit that it's these black male coons who are the detriment to our society, the better off we'll be. I'm sitting on here with a certified white supremacist who is literally trying to demean and denigrate the black community with lies. And you have this black male coon sitting here saying, I feel bad for anybody that's listening to this garbage. And it's literally me giving you facts that they are lying about the black community. And this coon is calling up saying he feels sorry for anybody who's listening to positivity about black people. This is the detrimentalness of these black male coons. And this is why our society is what it is. Because you had those coons listening to this, and I'm quoting saying FBI is saying this, the FBI is saying this. And you have these coons, two black male coons, calling up saying that, oh, I don't see that, and black people can't run a country, and I feel bad for anybody that listens to this. Really, unbelievable, these coons. Who does that? Like, who says that when somebody is on here going to bat for them, and this coon is sitting up here saying, oh, I feel sorry for anybody that's listening to this this about black people. So you know that's a self-hating coon just laying up with a white person.
All right. Thank you, Realist. I appreciate it. Cynthia, I'm giving you the last word on this. We're running out of time. We're going to have you back so we can start off at the top of the hour, have more time with you. Everybody and their mama want to talk to you, so I want to give them a chance by having you back. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
How do you see black men?
I see black men as a product of white supremacy. I see them as a product of white supremacy. They're in an inordinate circumstance, and they're having to deal with white supremacy, which has a very detrimental effect psychologically on anyone. So that's what I think. And I think you're also a perfect example of that as well, Jesse.
Why do black people see white people as smarter and stronger, especially black men? Why do they see them as being better than they are? Why do black people see such as yourself, why do you people see white people as being smarter and better than you are? Because I don't see it that way. Why do you see it that way?
Well, Jesse, you can include me in that because I don't believe that white people are smarter and better than anyone.
But you said it 1,000 times today.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I said that they have a attitude of white supremacy. I never said that was valid. So you can't put words in my mouth. I don't believe that they're smarter than anyone.
But you do. You have to say it.
This is his feeble attempt at manipulation. He has no leg to stand on. He already proved he doesn't have one. He's simply trying to say, oh, if you bring up that they're white supremacists, then that means you must think they're smarter. Just because you have a white supremacist terrorist mindset doesn't mean that you're smart. So that's where he's trying to be manipulative at. And it really doesn't work with me because at the end of the day, I didn't say that, and you're not going to put words in my mouth. But this coon and the coons that called up really do believe white people are smarter.
Everything has something to do with white supremacists, according to you.
It does. It all goes back to white supremacy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I personally think they're supreme or intelligent. I don't. And if you've looked at my content, you would actually see that I don't believe that they're smart at all. I think they're diabolical.
Thanks for coming on.
Bill Scott, a.k.a.
Views expressed by guests.
Now, so that was the entire interview. And I'm glad you guys watched it and you commented. And hopefully you guys will have some takeaways from this. If for nothing else, keep composure, because understand it's very important to keep composure, especially when a white supremacist and a white supremacist in blackface, because again, he's just a puppet. He doesn't even believe anything that he's saying. He's being puppeted by people who have to get this agenda out. White supremacists don't think Jesse Lee is smart. They just think that they're able to use him for their agenda. So that's why they're doing it. But you always want to keep composure because he didn't represent himself very well in this interview. And anybody that says that he did, that's just a white supremacist or a coon. But any sound-minding person will see he did not represent himself well in this video. There's too many questions that he couldn't answer. And when he couldn't answer them, he deflected and he resorted to trolling tactics. But the thing is, you guys need to make sure you remain cool. You really shouldn't only debate high-profile coons if you're going to debate them. Because with anybody else, like I get debate requests from normal everyday trolling coons on YouTube, or you guys will see people making bait videos that they think I'm going to respond to and go back and forth. I'm not going to do that because you're not on a high enough level. Now, Jesse Lee Peterson is on he's on a higher level than me. So ultimately, my goal is to debunk his rhetoric in front of his crowd. That's what I'm doing. And I noticed that he hasn't put the video up either. Now, the reason he hasn't put the video up on his YouTube channel is because of the fact that it doesn't look good for him. He probably won't put that video up. He probably won't. He puts stuff on his YouTube all the time. He probably won't put this video up because it doesn't look good for him. But you guys let me know what you think. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.